All right, let's continue the conversation on the presidential campaign. And joining us are Jennifer Nassour, former chairwoman of the Massachusetts Republican Party and co-founder of the Pocketbook Project, which looks to energize women to be the next generation of political leaders, and Samuel Gebru, political science professor at Tufts University and managing director of Black Lion Strategies, a social impact and public affairs consulting firm. Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. Jennifer, we're going to start with you. You are behind Nikki Haley for this race. What's her best case to win the nomination, to climb that Trump mountain and overtake him?
So I think best case is going to be, let's see what happens with the Iowa caucus. And I think if Nikki Haley can get somewhere around 20%, she comes out very strong going into New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is completely different than what Iowa is, because Iowa is a caucus, New Hampshire primary. That 40% of independent voters in New Hampshire also get to vote in the primary. We see those poll numbers for her continue to climb. She is the only candidate in this race whose poll numbers have consistently gone up. Trump's have flatlined and DeSantis's have tanked.
Does she have to win New Hampshire or just come in a respectable second place, especially given that the polls are now starting to move in her favor?
I think as long as she comes in a strong second place, she is in a phenomenal position to move forward to South Carolina and on to Super Tuesday.
Samuel, Chris Christie dropping out of the race last week. The race continues on both sides to be cuckoo, right? We just really can't predict. We have no evidence from the past to predict what's going to happen in the future. Donald Trump spending most of his time in courtrooms and doing a few rallies, but not on the campaign trail. What's your take on what's going to happen? Is this Donald Trump's race to lose, or is there going to be some big surprise here?
You know, given his previous election, I think we should expect a surprise. There's a long road between now and the Republican convention, and between then and the November election. I think the decision that Chris Christie made was for the good of not only his party, but the good of the nation. And I think that if there's a strong backing for Nikki Haley, we can see some sort of progress in this race. There needs to be a strong effort, in my opinion, to do whatever it takes to stop Donald Trump from becoming the nominee. But he has sort of coasted by, right? He has not participated in any of the debates. He has gotten a big platform to himself in these town halls and whatnot. He's definitely taken this sort of stage of being the presumptive nominee of his party. And I think that if there's a strong movement behind Nikki Haley, and if perhaps Chris Christie endorses her at some point in the next few weeks, that can definitely move in her favor.
With Christie out of the race, he was doing something that DeSantis and Haley wouldn't do full force the way he was, which I think worked in their benefit when it comes to ultimately one of them maybe winning the nomination, needing Trump's base to vote and come out for them. Now that he's out of the race, does it behoove both of them to sort of pick up that torch and say, look, you're going to have to start going at this guy the way Chris Christie was to win over voters?
Well, I think that, you know, there's two different school of thoughts. So, yes, you could do that. Did it win Christie any more votes? No, because the most recent poll had him at 12%. So I don't think that that's actually a great strategy. I think what Nikki Haley has been doing is taking the high road, right, and just laying out the difference between her and Trump. It's very, very significant. You can see the differences and you can see the style. And quite honestly, aren't we sick and tired of politicians, supposed leaders, calling other leaders names and making fun of them and putting them in a corner? I would rather have a leader who's going to lead from in front and bring the country ahead with her in a positive direction than going negative.
So let me ask you this. Do you think she sees Trump as a threat to democracy the way that Chris Christie sees Trump as a threat to democracy?
She has said a number of times, every time she's interviewed, he views January 6th as a great day. She views January 6th as a terrible day.
All right, Samuel, let's talk about the Democratic Party, because you're getting kind of a pass here because of what's going on the Republican side where, you know, Trump's not showing up. There's like these two races. Sometimes people forget that Trump is in the Republican Party and he's actually in the primary race like real people. Yeah. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, Democrats aren't competing. There's really no primary. Yeah. But there is a primary. And then the DNC is like cracks down on the New Hampshire Democrats saying, you know, your delegate business, what you're doing is useless. Right? So does this hurt Joe Biden in the race? And is this a wound with South Carolina that's going to be going first in the next cycle? What's your take on how people are feeling about the Democratic Party in this race?
Well, so I think that's a complicated question. There's several layers here. One, what the DNC said about the New Hampshire primary, calling it useless, I think was inappropriate. I do agree that a state like South Carolina should go first. I think it's more reflective of the national electorate, and also South Carolina has a better track record in predicting who the nominee will be as opposed to New Hampshire. But this does not discount the strong care that New Hampshire voters take in the primary process. They are very engaged. They are well informed. I think Biden snubbing New Hampshire in the way that he's doing may hurt him, but in the overall span of things, I don't think it really matters as much for him.
Do you think there's not? Sorry,
okay, I was going to say, what do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you say, Samuel. I think that, you know, in the interest of democracy and you being a leader, you can't say that it doesn't mean anything, that their primary doesn't mean anything. This is a state in the United States that's voting. And I think, you know, if they wouldn't go in line, then you say, okay, you know what, why don't we work on this in the future? I'm going to participate in the primary. I'm not happy about this. South Carolina, we love you. We wish that you were #1, but you're not. We're going to work on this in the future. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are changing any political rules.
So Donald Trump has the chance to lose once or twice. He could lose in the primary. He could lose the general. And what happens next, a lot of people are concerned about, given what we had happen on January 6th. I want to play a soundbite. And we've heard some crazy things last week from Trump and his lawyers about his whole notion of immunity as president. But there is concerns being raised about the threat of violence depending on what happens in this election. Let's take a listen.
And I think they feel this is the way they're going to try and win. And that's not the way it goes. It'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box.
Samuel, are you concerned about the potential for political violence? It's a question I want to ask you too, Jennifer, as well, but are you concerned about political violence depending on what happens?
Absolutely. We saw that not just on January 6th, but go back to Charlottesville, go back to other instances where we've seen Trump. I mean, Trump is a demagogue. He's a rabble-rouser. He has a track record of doing this. We should take him at his word for the threats that he's making now. And the concern is this goes at the heart of our democracy. If there is a strong cohort of people in this country who do not see the result as being legitimate, who do not see the institutions as being valid, that goes to the soul of our democracy. And I think that we should be taking this threat seriously regardless.
How would you anticipate Nikki Haley winning this primary contest and Trump having to kind of exit stage left? Do you think he would?
He's going to be angry and childish and throw sand around and throw toys around no matter what happens. And so I think that at this point, listen, my plea to voters is this. We see, especially here in Massachusetts and in other states around the country, that only around 20 to 25% of the electorate comes out and votes in primaries. Therefore, when you're left with a decision, you are left with the polarized decisions. Please go out and vote, right? That is the most important thing, is to get out and have your voice heard. If you are in a state where it is like Massachusetts, like New Hampshire, where you're an independent and you can vote, it is very important to get out there and vote. That's how this changes. So unless Donald Trump is given a mandate that this is someone else won this election, and it's not just 8 million votes, it is a substantial loss that he loses by in a primary, that is the only way to finally get rid of him. His people will always be behind him no matter what. However, I think that at the end of the day, when they see that the country is moving forward in a way that is positive, in a positive direction, they will change course.
All right, well, no matter what happens, we hope both of you will come back on that issue and give us your insight. We really do appreciate it. Samuel Gebru, Jennifer Nassour, thank you so much.
Thank you.